If you've ever seen my channel before, you know that I've done a fair amount of challenge runs of the Might Magic games, particularly 6 through 8. Which ones that I've done are the hardest? Today I'm ranking the top 5 hardest Might Magic challenge runs I've done on this channel. These are the runs that stand out to me as the ones that I had the most trouble with and were the most frustrating. I decided to not rank my Baldur's Gate solo run, hardcore, no reload, for this list because most of you probably haven't seen it, and it's kind of hard to compare it to the Might and Magic challenge runs that I've done, especially because in that run I was on the highest difficulty, as opposed to other runs where I only make limitations in the game and I don't change the actual mechanics to make it harder. Though to be honest, if I did rank it, it would probably be the hardest run that I've done, simply because there were so many points in those runs where I was literally killed by bad RNG, like getting bandit spawns going into High Edge, or the Autolux Sphere not working in Ducal Palace. I'm also not going to be including my first challenge run that I did, my Magic 6 Solo Druid, No Deaths, Reloads, NPCs turn-based run, as even though I did have a lot of trouble with it and it took a fair amount of attempts, I still didn't really know what I was doing, so it's kind of hard to rank it as being uniquely difficult, as opposed to me just not being experienced yet. Basically, if after I finished that run the first time, I probably would have been able to finish it again without any problems. So with that being said, let's get into the hardest Might and Magic challenge runs that I have done. Starting with an honorable mention being my Might and Magic 7 Solo Thief, no deaths, no reloads, no turn-based. This is another run that's kind of hard to rank due to how I approach doing it. One of the hardest parts of this run was the first promotion, where I struggled with how to get to the vase without dying. I tried tanking all the hits, and I tried using an invisibility scroll, but that just wasn't consistent enough. Finally, I tried getting 2 jump scrolls and jumping over the table, which seemed to be the best way to get out alive. Compared to other items I had to get in other runs, 2 jump scrolls aren't really that hard to come by. The part in this run that I struggled with the most was the Eoful tunnels, as I had to fight through the monsters without Blaster. Although this was back before I decided to use Corner Cheese against Robert the Wise, because I thought that it would be kind of an exploit. So instead, I got an Invis scroll and stole the cube from him, which ironically I didn't know at the time, that people actually consider that to be more of a glitch than the Corner Cheese. But because I stole the cube, I didn't have access to Blaster in the Eoful tunnels, which would have made that area a piece of cake. Instead, I experimented with using wands, a Toxic Cloud, and Shrinking Ray because those ancient behemoths just were tanks and they just did so much damage. They were too powerful to melee without using some kind of magic. If I had just killed Robert the Wise, though, this one really wouldn't have been too bad, so I can't really put this on the list. So number 5 is Might and Magic 6, Solo Cleric, no deaths, no reloads, no NPCs, no turn-based, no Kriegspire Well, and a bunch of other rules that didn't really matter all that much. This run I kind of forgot how difficult it was. This was the first run I didn't have access to any elemental magic. No fly, no town portal, no Lloyd's Beacon. Having to walk around without being able to teleport or move around fastly was pretty hard to adjust to. I can easily get one-shotted by random monsters, and I couldn't fight massive mobs because there's just too many of them and they would just kill me pretty easily. Because of this, I had to do what I call item farming, which, if you've ever seen my runs, you know what that is, but for those of you who don't, it's basically the practice of looking for specific items in shops, usually magic scrolls, and then forcing time to pass, either by resting in a tavern or traveling repeatedly back and forth until the shops reset, as they do every few weeks. Repeat this process until I get the item that I want. If you couldn't tell, this process is very time consuming. I try to do it as little as I need to. But in this run I had to use a Lloyd's Beacon scroll, which I actually have to get 2 of them to work, because I need to use 1 to set and then 1 to recall. You could say I could use Town Portal, but it's too risky because it has a 50% chance of failing. I had to use 2 Lloyd's Beacon scrolls in Castle Darkmoor, as there was just too many enemies for me to tank all their hits, and I couldn't melee them individually. I also had to use jump scrolls to dodge attacks. Initially, I actually had a rule that I couldn't get the Fly Scroll and New Serpigal, but I scrapped that because it was just too frustrating to have to rely on getting Fly in shops, because I was just too tired of having barely any access to Fly. I actually spent so much time farming scrolls, I reached the age where I die instantly when I touch the water, which is a mechanic I didn't know existed, and I still don't know if it actually exists or if it's just some weird bug in the version that I'm playing. Be sure to let me know in the comments. It's only number 5 because after Darkmoor this run actually isn't too bad, as I can actually kill the monsters in the Tomb of Arn by blasting them with shrapnel, so I wasn't in that much danger of dying at that point, although I did have to use one Town Portal scroll in the Hive at one point. Number 4, Might and Magic 8, Solo Troll, no deaths, no reloads. This run caught me off guard on how difficult it was. At first I thought it was going to be as hard as Solo Minotaur, which I got in one attempt. After all, trolls are about as good, if not better, than Minotaurs. They got more HP, better weapon skills. Sure, they don't have magic, but they have regeneration, so that should balance it out, right? Having not access to healing spells. Of course, I didn't know regeneration is basically useless because it's slow as shit. But hey, I have mace, so I can paralyze enemies with that. I didn't expect the paralyze, even at 20 skill, to not work as frequently as I needed it to. It sure didn't feel like a 1 in 5 chance to me. Since I ended up being too weak in a lot of cases, I had to once again farm scrolls. And in Might and Magic 8, it's way harder to get an Lloyd's Beacon scroll in a shop because it's a Grandmaster scroll. This is in addition to having to get telekinesis, invisibility, jump. I also had to get lucky and get an item that gives immunity to paralyze because there were enemies that could paralyze me and kill the run immediately. I also had to use vampiric weapon scrolls to put up a fight against the monsters inside the crystal. So how I farm scrolls is to make it less monotonous, is I trained a couple of levels, then I went to shops across the game, as in the span of 16 days, plus the travel time it took going all these areas, the shop should reset by then. But I had to do this every time I trained. So very tedious. Every time I leveled up twice, I have to go to every shop in the game. And I haven't mentioned the problems I had with inventory. Because I didn't have cleric magic, I had to get all my buff potions in addition to carrying around scrolls. And I thought I could just store them somewhere, especially since they literally give you a place inside the Merchant Guild to store your shit. But the place resets every 2 years. So after 2 years pass, which is likely with all the item farming I have to do, my storage area resets and I lose all my fucking items. So I just have to keep these items, all these scrolls and potions, in my inventory basically all the time and keep my inventory pretty fucking full. On top of that, because I have no magic, no fly, because the scroll doesn't work, I have to walk around everywhere and I can't avoid it. I have to use water breathing potions. I can't use water walk because it doesn't work either. I have to use that to cross water because with so much HP that I have, I die in a few seconds in the water. Getting to that boat in Dagwoon at the beginning is such a pain in the ass because I die too fast to swim in the boat. Even if I have like 10 potions, I just die too fast. So I have to enter the dungeon, which for some reason, when I jump in that part where I have to jump over platforms, it malfunctions randomly, so I have to go back to the beginning, which I only get like one try before the serpents just kill me. Another terrible part was a Plane of Earth. I had to use 3 Lloyd's Beacon scrolls in my winning run in the Plane of Earth because I got stuck in the elevator room because I couldn't kill the monsters fast enough. The reason why it's only number 4 is aside from the Plane of Earth and the first dungeon, there wasn't really much of a threat in dying, and I could have even avoided dying in the Plane of Earth or using Lloyd's Beacon if I farmed for Spark Swan and fired down the chute like I did in Solo Cleric. But like I was in the mood to farm more items and have to carry around more shit as if I had space for that. At number 3, I have Might and Magic 7 Ninja Core. The Salt Core-esque Naruto-themed run that I did for Might and Magic 7 actually was pretty painful. The rules and restrictions definitely made certain parts really bad to deal with if I got unlucky. First, I have 3 monks and 1 cleric, which that means I had no way to ID items and therefore I couldn't equip them. So I had to get a scholar in my party if I wanted to equip any items after the first area. I also couldn't open the chests and the barrows without 12 points in the skill of disarm, so I had to get a locksmith early on. So in case you haven't noticed, I have to get 2 specific NPCs within the first few areas or I'm fucked. Which, if you don't know the rules, I'm only able to look at NPCs once, clear a dungeon, and then look at the NPCs again. Unless I clear another dungeon, I can't look at the NPCs again in that area. So it got to the point where if I didn't get one of the two necessary NPCs in the first sweep of Emerald Isle, I just reset because I only got a few more shots of getting both of them. After Castle Harmondale, I have to go straight to the Barrows immediately so I can get the monks promoted. And after I got the promotion, there was a 50% chance I got to Barrow 4, which basically meant I was almost sure to die due to all the enemies in those close quarters. I actually tried tanking Fireball close range, just because it was the most effective way I can think of to clear all those monsters quickly. Then I have to clear the Troglodytes in Stone City, which might be too difficult if I get too many queens. And after that, I have to go to the Red Dwarf mines and kill Medusas at a fairly low level, and no way to heal stone if I run out of potions, unless I get lucky and get an expert healer. I also haven't mentioned that due to the skill limitations in the rules, I only had one character that can use bow. Good luck kiting with a normal level 1 skill in bow, and one character. I basically have to melee everything. And after that, I had to go to the Tellurian Caves, which have ancient wyverns which can kill my characters. And if one of my characters gets stoned or paralyzed or killed, and I don't have any access to a master healer, then basically they have to stay that way until I can get someone who can heal it. And I only have a few attempts to get a master healer, many of which are late in the game. This run took a lot of attempts to complete, some of which are from having to reset for NPCs, but mainly it's only number 3 because after I clear the breeding pit, the run actually is pretty easy. Having access to Grandmaster Body Magic makes fighting enemies a lot easier to manage. I don't even have to worry about status effects because of the guaranteed protection from magic spellbook in the Temple of the Moon in Emerald Island. I guess it's more fitting to go full Ninja Core and do 4 monks, but fuck that. There's no way I can melee Robert Rise without cheese or sun protection against eradication. Number 2, Mind Magic 6, Solo Knight, no deaths, no reloads, no NPCs, turn-based, Kriegspire well, etc. If you thought farming items was tedious before, you haven't seen anything yet. Knights in Mind Magic 6 are really weak. No Arms Master means they don't really hit for very much damage. And there's still the problem of having no spells. First I tried actually using melee, but too weak to do that. Can't even clear the Icewind Keep. Dragoon's Keep is too slow. Next I tried trying to max out bow by farming horseshoes, by going to jail repeatedly, but that's way too slow, and the results aren't even good once I actually get maximum bow. So basically I decided the best way to get through all these dungeons that I needed to go through is to just tank everything. But due to the sheer size of the enemies in some of these dungeons, I basically had to farm a shitload of Lloyd's Beacon scrolls and jump scrolls, and I had to make a shit ton of Divine Cure potions. In the Tomb of Varn, at one point, I basically had to use an entire inventory's worth of Divine Cure potions just to walk through a fucking room. And I can still get really unlucky and get stuck or take too much damage at once. It's already bad enough that I have to farm all these Lloyd's Beacon scrolls and like 50 potions just to get through a certain area. But the fact that I have to do all that and I still have a chance of getting killed is really what makes this one of the shittiest things I've ever done. And after the Tomb of Varn, I still have to deal with the Hive. Which that fight against the Queen, I actually died several times because I get swarmed by devils within a few seconds. Even though I have this blaster that's, hasted, within a few seconds devils are on me and they literally kill me within a few seconds because I don't have any time to shoot anything. It took me a few tries to actually find a safe place that I could actually kill her fast enough before the devils come and kill me. Not to mention there are a few places like the Devil's Outpost that I have to kill monsters. And because my knight is so fucking weak, the best way to kill them is to, once again, farm, this case, a wand of shrapnel. All while I have to go in and hit him with shrapnel, dodge, and then run in the circle until I get my recovery back, and then hit him again until I kill his ass. Also, I need to mention that unlike in Mind Magic 7 or 8, you can actually use fly with a knight, but you have to specifically drink a divine power potion first. So add that to the list of items I have to get. At one point I died because of some weird glitch where I took fall damage indoors, and I was like, fuck that, I'm not counting that shit because I was so fed up with that at that point. When I first did this run, I thought this was going to be the hardest run that I'll ever do. But in case you couldn't tell, there's still one more run that surpassed this one in sheer bullshittery. The number one hardest challenge run I've ever done is, hands down, Mind Magic 8 Solo Dark Elf, no deaths, no reloads. If you saw all the attempts I did this run, this one shouldn't surprise you one bit. Basically, take the Mind Magic 6 Solo Knight and make him 10 times weaker, and on top of that, make the shop RNG even worse, because, again, Lloyd's Beacon Scrolls and Mind Magic 8 are Grandmaster. The Dark Elf is way too fucking weak, period. She can't hit worth a shit, and she's got no hit points. I know that some people are going to say, oh, we'll just get Bo. But I tried that, and there's no way to get the skill high enough to do anything without 1. Massive XP farming, and 2. Artifacts which are purely RNG based. And even then, I can't really what am I going to do when I'm in areas where there's monsters close by right at the start of the dungeon, like the Plane of Fire or Eschaton's Crystal? I can't fucking shoot that. They're immediately on me. So basically, I'm fucking screwed there. And you might think, but don't you have invisibility in Town Portal? But I only get those spells at master level. And for Town Portal, that means I can't teleport with hostile enemies nearby. So if I'm invisible and it wears off, with a shitload of monsters around me, I can't teleport out, and I'm basically dead on the spot. It doesn't matter how many potions I have, because I'll die in like 2 hits anyway. Oh, and I still have the same problem that I did with Solo Troll, where I don't have any inventory space. There are a lot of points in this run where I can just die so easily. Plane of Air is really easy to die in because all the air elementals with their massive mega sparks. Plane of Earth isn't as dangerous, but it requires me to be very careful, and I have to shoot sparks down a chute for 5 minutes. Plane of Fire is especially dangerous because it's so easy in the tiny little bridges to fall off or run into an elemental. Eschaton's Crystal, those dragons at the entrance are so hard to squeeze through. And then after all that, I still have to make it through the Prison of the Firelorn, which I've never been able to make it through to the exit door alive. The only way I've ever been able to survive that area is with casting Lloyd's Beacon out of the area. The monsters there are just way too close together, and they hit for so much damage so quickly. And the other elemental prisons aren't too easy either, though they're not nearly as dangerous. So basically, this run is nerve-inducing from beginning to end. This run basically became a stealth pacifist run that requires a shitload of RNG and resetting areas to find Lloyd's Beacon Scrolls that have like a 1% chance of getting in shops. And there are certain parts where I have to have a Lloyd's Beacon Scroll or I'm basically dead. But it takes so long to get even one scroll that I have to be selective as to when I want to use these scrolls because they're so hard to get in the first place. So I decided to go in an area like the Plane of Fire without a scroll, and all I need to do is see that shaded little portrait light up and I know I'm about to see my maker. And I did this run with the Greyface patch, which I didn't know allowed me to pause the game in screen without, right-clicking on something specific. I can't imagine how much of a pain in the ass it would be to do this run without Greyface. And I'm not finding out because I'm not ever touching this shit ever again. This is hands down the most insane challenge run I've ever done on my channel. So that's it. I don't know if I'm going to be doing any more challenge runs, especially of the Mind Magic games. If I don't, I'm confident in saying these are the most challenging runs that I've ever done.